A lot of viewers and listeners may not be au fait with your involvement, so interviews like this will bring the awareness of just what Jamaica is doing.
Master Coach Apostle Courtney McLean and Business Coach Zidane Sinister are powered up to share their expertise on the business end.
Welcome to another episode of The Business End. I am your host, Zidane Sinister, and here on The Business End we provide real and practical solutions to advance businesses by speaking with experts in the field and existing entrepreneurs. Now today we are honored to have Mrs. Donna Howe, the Managing Director of Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited. Now Mrs. Howe is a powerhouse in strategic planning, operations and corporate leadership, especially in the field of mining. And she also owns a MBA in finance and qualifications from Chartered Taxation Association. She's also have qualifications and certifications from the Harvard Business School. Now, Mrs. Howe is a final year doctoral candidate in the global finance and leadership. Now, that is not it yet, ladies and gentlemen. Mrs. Howe is deeply connected and committed to the youth mentorship, community development, and environmental sustainability. Now, under her guidance, the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited has expanded its corporate social responsibility initiatives to including scholarships and support for the local schools and infirmaries. And a little later, she will tell us a whole lot more about her social involvement in the community. Now, join us in welcoming Mrs. Donna Howe.
Hello, Sudan. It's a pleasure to be here. Good afternoon, Jamaica, and good afternoon to all your listeners out there.
Yes, it's a pleasure to have you. And like I tell you, if you're in studio, I am burning up because she is fire, she is radiant, and she is just beaming in studio. And I wish my viewers and listeners was able to see her in studio. How are you this afternoon? How has your afternoon been so far?
My afternoon's been very welcoming to
Yes.
This morning was very productive. I'm just coming out of a ceremony. You spoke a little about my introduction. Thank you very much for that, about our corporate social responsibility.
Yes.
And we expand that we did that in an exercise just today, more than an exercise. It was a ceremony in Clarendon where we handed out to the farmers some fertilizers and tools and equipment following the passing of Hurricane Beryl. So before I get more into it, that just shows you my day is very compact.
Very productive and compact. Now, for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, what is the mandate of the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited?
So Jamaica Bauxite Mining is a 100% owned public company. We're a government-owned entity, therefore we're a company of the people. We were set up in 1975, some 50 years ago, to look after all of the assets of the bauxite industry. So we have, at one point or another, had some ownership or partnership with the private sectors within the mining entities. And then, because we have diversified over the years, some of those partnerships no longer are. We only have one partnership remaining, and that is with Discovery Bauxite Partners, where we are still the 51% owner. But we do have a number of assets, and that is really important. The assets that we have are two ports, one in Discovery Bay, which still does operate and mine the bauxite there, and the other is the Reynolds Pier in Ocherius. And while we don't operate bauxite there mining, we do have, and that comes into the diversification portfolio, we do export limestone. And we'll go back a bit more into that as we continue.
Now, you initially started your career in finance and international tax. What led you or what influenced you to enter into that sphere, and how has that influenced your leadership at the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited?
So you say initially, I've never left
Yes.
finance. I have transitioned from international tax, but that has been the foundation and the bedrock and underpinned all of my skill sets, I believe, that I have garnered over the years. So my trained background is in international tax at Ernst & Young. So I started off my career at the top four So
Yes.
coming from such a grand thoroughbred as Ernst & Young, it has really given me this platform, and I always refer back to the stringent rules of regulation that was adopted there, and the good professional ethics that I've adopted. And I believe that that is what has prepared me and shaped me. And yes, it was an international, it was from the UK, hence the voice, so let's go there,
Yes,
the accent. And I am British, come from Jamaican descent, and came back to Jamaica, which is home, some 13 years ago. So let's just get that part over and done with. And so all my career up until when I came back to Jamaica has been in the UK. And so finance, it was international tax, and then we transitioned into corporate finance because they go hand in hand.
Yes.
And I believe working with international tax authorities, because that's what I did. I settled a lot of good negotiations with transfer pricing when I started working in at CBS, and we moved into industry after leaving Ernst & Young. And you just, those skill sets have just been what I've always come back to, and hence what has led me into this role. As you said, how I've transitioned into Jamaica Bauxite mining. My background isn't in the mining sector,
Yes.
but because I have got strong leadership and
Yes.
have been proficient in my academic and working leadership career, there's certain level of leadership skill sets that you have that is almost amenable and adaptable in any industry. So then I just got very au fait with the mining sector.
Yes.
And we can go into that. So it has been the beacon of my development, my foundation years, and I've just built on that experience.
Yeah, more about your involvement in some of the Fortune 500 companies. Now, you made mention that you had worked at CBS. You also worked at General Motors, and the list goes on. Some of the world's biggest corporations. And now we are lucky here in Jamaica to have your skill set here to help us to push through some of the mandates that we have at the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited. Now, what are some of the strategic initiatives or some strategic plans and objectives that you would have spent your time at CBS and General Motors garnering, and now you're able to put those plans into motion at the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited? What are some of those those strategic plans and approaches that you would have implemented here to bring this quasi-government institution up to the standard of Fortune 500 companies?
It comes back to me looking at the balance sheet. It's as simple and as basic as that.
Yes.
When I assumed the leadership as managing director 3 years ago at JBM, it was very simple and basic, believe it or not. We have a lot of assets that were underutilized.
Yes.
And they're valuable assets, and assets are capital is about productivity.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. And how are we going to generate more productivity, more volume, increase revenue? We have to get our operations up. And it was as simple as that. And then what we did as well is looked at the whole of all of the different facets of the operation, and structured it into pillars. So it was more about corporate governance and putting them into a strategic arrangement. So we have 4 clear pillars, and all of those come together for the vision of creating sustainable social economic development.
Yes.
So I set out a clear pathway of what I wanted the JBM. And you hear me say JBM because we're transitioning into JBM because we no longer, our core activity isn't bauxite. So I looked at all of our assets. We have land, we have ports, and we have real estate. Any one of those asset bases are different individual businesses. And then I said, what is the common theme that connects all of those together? We're all in St. Anne, and the community engagement. So we took on and adopted a philosophy of being in the bauxite industry is the legacy assets of the bauxite.
Yes.
And that is to the reclamation of the lands and repurposing them to a restructure for social and economic development. So the principles that I learned in international tax largely comes from organic growth, and you can either grow organically or you can grow through mergers and acquisitions.
Now, I want to ask you, what has been the most critical or life-changing moment in your career so far?
I would say it's where I am now at JBM. And why I say that is because I feel that all my working career has led me up to this path now. My shareholders are my stakeholders, which are the people of Jamaica, the people. And I feel that I'm making a genuine impact on sustainability and leaving legacy marks with the work that we're doing at JBM and developing us as a brand, as a public body. So the public body that we're in at Jamaica Bauxite Mining, we have got a business mandate. We're a quasi-government, as you said. And we do our stakeholder are the GOJ, the people of Jamaica, and the public assets that we have, I believe, growing them and developing them, most satisfying is leaving that Indigenous mark. And what I'm able to do from a social aspect as well, because part of it's written in the Mining Act that we should, after you finish mining, the reclamation and that community impact and community engagement, and I find that part of my role and this journey is the most impactful, the most meaningful, and I'm finding that as a life-changing moment.
And we applaud you, Mrs. Donna Howe, because it's been a legacy problem of Jamaica that we have a lot of idle land, we have a lot of idle assets. And if we only take a minute look and a detailed look of some of those assets and monetize them, get them productive, if Jamaica will be better for it in terms of our economic growth. And like you said, you would have combined that role with the social development. So when you have the economic growth and social development, that's when you're going to have economic development. Absolutely. And that economic development is for us to push forward. Now, I want to dive deeper into your role as the Jamaica Bauxite Mining and just how you merge some of those objectives that you have into a national interest to moving Jamaica forward.
So everything that we do, being a public body, is guided by policy.
Yeah.
And while we are diversifying and going into this new paradigm, I'm driven by the government's policy. There are so many white papers and green papers that have been submitted. So I'll give you an example. We are pursuing sustainability, green financing, going into developing our port, which will look into the blue sustainable development principles.
Yeah.
But where does that initiative come from? It comes from the Vision 2030 on us seeing how many public bodies we can get to net zero. So while we are seem like that we are setting the standard in pioneering, we've just launched our inaugural ESG report. That is a pioneering step, but it's coming from policy, and so the national goals are using building like a housing development, for example, utilising your land. We're in the agency of the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining.
Yeah.
Food sustainability, how do we encourage more farmers in St. Anne? So we have the lands there, so we'll encourage them to access our land for training programs and farming at a discounted rate. So whatever we do, we have 6 with very defined corporate strategic goals, and they originate from the Vision 2030, and then we build out initiatives and strategies within those that are very specific towards our against our assets or revenue generation, brand creation around JBM and brand Jamaica. So they're very purposeful and intentional, but it all stems from policy and national development aspirations.
Yes, understood. Is there any specific project that the wider Jamaica would love to hear about in terms of what the JBM is working on that will help in terms of the environmental development in Jamaica.
Sure. So 2 immediate projects that we're working on that will have a significant environmental impact is the Reynolds Pier that I spoke about.
Yes.
We're transitioning to renewable energy
Yes.
to generate the loading systems that we do there. So it will go to 84% on renewable energy,
Yes.
putting in PV systems there. So that will be the first initiative that we're doing for this
Yes.
financial year, by the 31st of March 2025, and that's impactful. And then also on the port as well, we do want to expand the capacity of the loading rate and loading more ships.
Yes.
There in the aggregate and limestone, and we are going to build another berth, and that will be done by not just doing the typical traditional way of using a lot of concrete and slabs, but we'll be putting in a pontoon, which is similar to a floating berth, but it still needs to be very rigid.
Yes.
So it's going to be used from repurposed material. So that's
Yes.
what makes it sustainable and resilient, because it's renewable source.
Yes.
And that comes with a carbon credit. So they're 2 sizable environmental sustainable projects that will be undertaken. One in the medium to long term, the latter that I just spoke about, getting the pontoon in to expand the capacity of the port, and the former one is what we're doing right now, is the transition into the renewable energy.
As a leader with extensive experience in negotiation, what advice would you give to an emerging young professional or even a young business owner who wants to build successful partnerships and networking, moving their business forward?
Use the word negotiations, and often at times it's not about who has the upper hand, it's how you can work together.
Yes.
And especially, you said, with a new business, you need to understand what you bring to the table, what your unique selling point is, what your value proposition is, what your leverage is. Understanding your value is your negotiation skill, is your negotiation asset, and it's how it might be lesser in a particular dollar value, but it might have a more of a value to you. So you have to understand what your value and your contribution, or what your commercial terms, or what your product is, or what your service is, the unique selling point and value proposition of that. And then go into a consultation. It depends on what the deal is, whether it's a contractual arrangement, whether it's trying to negotiate a long-term deal, selling your product or your service. I always approach whatever negotiation consultation with my staff, with a new product, new service line, trying to get buy-in on an idea as a consultative process. What am I giving? What am I offering? What do I expect to receive? And then understanding that I might not get my output, but I do want to know that I understand the value or the contribution that I'm bringing to that table. So often at times, and be consistent as well with your message or whatever your product, service, that value that you're bringing to the table. And don't be swayed by it. You have to have your own buy-in, first of all, and before you can go to get other buy-in, whether that's from customers, from the other person that you're negotiating or the consultation from. You have to be very regimental with your own self-belief of your value, your leverage of or the commercial terms.
Yeah, so you first have to believe in yourself. If you don't believe in the product and the service that you're offering, then somebody else can't be buying into that product and services.
Absolutely.
So that's a big gem there, ladies and gentlemen. You must believe in your product and your service. Believe in yourself before you can go to the negotiating table. Because if you don't believe in yourself, then you won't know the value you bring to the table. And that is the value. From a value standpoint is where you're going to negotiate your strong point in order to get the deal done.
And can I add to that?
Yes.
We, as a Jamaican brand,
Yes.
others always see what we don't always see. in ourselves. We have to take our athletes, our reserves, our resources. We have to put that value on it, because the international markets and other persons will place a higher value on it than ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's something that JBM has really done. We've looked at the value of our assets, and we have a lot of resources within our organisation, and really put a value on that. And that's what we take to market and serve. So in anything we do as human beings as well, we have to understand the value of who we are, because we're all very unique and we are not like anybody else. Value and appreciate who we are.
Brand Jamaica is big. Brand Jamaica is large. If we continue to press in with Brand Jamaica, we can definitely take our country forward. Now, you would have served on many boards, right? And you would have had many boards that involve in community outreach. How do you find the time to motivate yourself into spreading yourself across all these boards and all these responsibilities? How do you do it? Superwoman, how do you do it?
I question that as well.
Yeah.
Because whatever I do, I'm very thorough and apply myself. So I try not to stretch myself. So I'm very deliberate and intentional with my time, my resources, because my body and myself is a resource, and my knowledge. So I'm very, I plan, and I'm very well prepared, and I'm very purposeful. So whatever I do it for a reason. I sit on school boards because I'm very passionate about the next generation and giving back to the communities in which that I'm in, and the public body boards that I sit on. I believe I can make a strategic impact and change. So I work very hard. I work a lot of hours. Sacrifice does come at a cost. But it's a benefit to it as well. So I've balanced that to saying that if I'm not doing something and doing it well to have an impact, I'm not going to invest my time in it.
Yeah.
And so that's my philosophy.
But certainly you have been putting your time in it, because everything that you have put your hands to have been bore fruit and have been for the betterment of your community. You mentioned education, and we're on this thrust in Jamaica to educate the youths, to bring them to the next generation, the STEM and all those things that we've been talking about. That is quite something to move forward. So we applaud you, Mrs. Howe, to be pushing for the next generation and pushing for the development of the youth. Now, you would have had vast experience, over 20 years, over 30 years of experience. Now, that sort of experience, they have some business owners who are thinking about pushing their business to the next level.
Right.
You have persons who are sitting down thinking, I want to get into business. They hear you speak and say, I can be like Mrs. Howe. What sort of advice do you have for those persons who want to get into business or want to take the business to the next level, but they keep hitting that ceiling? What sort of advice you have for them?
Be persistent, be determined. We're living in a different era right now, new paradigm, the digitalization era, technology. Things you can become, if I put a money value on it, a millionaire overnight. But there's still some consistent principles you have to adopt, and that's work ethic, discipline. Even to build an app that has a digital premise that can generate a lot of revenue, there's still some basic principles of knowing your product, your service. You have to be applied to it, be consistent, build a good framework. Look into risks. Risks can have positive and negative effects. Look at how you can maneuver around those. Always think about the unknown. We are in a different era, what I said, that we have the Gen Zs, we have a different demographic, we have lots of markets, we have geographical markets. Be focused as well. That doesn't necessarily mean limited. It just means very have focal areas and be very applied to whatever you want to do. So it's always good to have big ambitions, but take it a step by step, knowing what those ambitions are and that end goal, but be very purposeful in that roadmap there. And you are not, it's very rare that someone will succeed at the first attempt. You have to be determined. People say failures, but don't look at it like failures. Just look at it like that route didn't work, that market didn't work, that customer base didn't work. And then always say, what can I do differently, but still keeping true to your initial intention, but having workarounds, persistence.
So set your big goals and targets, but have smaller targets. And as you hit those targets, you will develop that level of confidence that you can do it. And even if you don't hit the targets, there's a lesson to be learned.
Indeed.
And that lesson is an investment for the future.
Absolutely.
Mighty. We thank you, Mrs. Howe. But what's next for Mrs. Donna Howe, and by extension, Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited?
Jamaica Bauxite Mining, where I see us transitioning to is JBM, as you keep on hearing me say, is because our portfolio is so diverse. And it's really just to make that societal, environmental impact. And we're very deliberate in the steps that we're taking to achieve that. So you're going to see much more around the sustainability initiatives that JBM are doing. Because we come from an extraction industry, it's very important that we are very visible with our efforts alongside renewable energies, around the blue economy, because we're in the marine world, and because the governance around climate action is so very real to us, we'll be doing a lot of reporting on that, certification on that, to show our efforts in these areas. So you're going to see a lot of initiatives around our environmental footprint and what we're doing to reverse that against climate action. And then initiatives are very dear to me because we are here for the next generation. We were gifted planet Earth from God, and it's ours to look after. And we are not doing such a good job of that. So I believe all of us has a role to play in that next step of what we're doing and being purposeful about that climate action. So that is next personally for me in my life and for my children and the next generations, and working with the youth to engender them to sustainable resilience, and further Jamaica Bauxite Mining, JBM.
Well, you at the helm of JBM, our future is secured. But where and how can persons find you?
You can contact us on our website, which is www.jbm.gov.jm. We're also on Instagram, Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited, and Facebook as well. Check us out.
Yes, on all social medias it is JBM, and you will definitely be able to reach Mrs. Donna Howe. We want to thank you. I want to thank you for sharing your time. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for your time. It has been a wonderful, wonderful interview, and just dissecting just how much involved the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited is into Jamaica. So a lot of viewers and listeners may not be au fait with your involvement. So interviews like this will bring the awareness of just what Jamaica is doing, and monetizing, as you said, getting the assets productive, so that we are able to put together and have economic growth, and along with the social development, we will definitely be having economic development. We thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sedan, and thank you to all your listeners. And it was a pleasure to be on Business End.
Thank you very much. And we said it every single week. You are the Business End Show tribe, which means you are the best. No, we can be contacted at the Business End Show on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, and also on TikTok. Until next time, continue to be your increasing best. Thank you.
Master Coach Apostle Courtney McLean and Business Coach Zidane Simister are powered up to share their expertise on the business end seat. But don't forget to tell a friend or a colleague. And of course, have your tools on hand, your notebook and your pen. Classes are in session every Tuesday, 3:30 on Gospel JA for the business end. Master Coach Apostle Courtney McLean and Business Coach Zidane Sinister await you.